Good Saturday morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Top 10 Songs. We've gotten the co-captain's chair. I hope I'm pointing the right way. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll cover both aspects of it. Martin Popoff is joining us once again from Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles and Banger TV and author supreme. Martin, how you doing this morning?
Thank you. I'm doing fine. This is going to be a fun one. It was quite odd doing a top 10 where for a band with so few records, right?
I know. So we're talking about Badlands. So this has been a band that's been asked for by many, many people, a very popular band. But like Martin says, you know, we got a catalog of 2 normal releases and then a release that came out sort of long after they broke up, filled with demos and all sorts of fun things. So Martin and I are each going to count down our 10 favorite tracks from this particular band. And I'll just go on record in saying this was kind of fun to put together because, quite frankly, I don't think this band ever put out a bad song. So trying to pick amongst, what do we got here, 25 tracks total, maybe? Kind of interesting to kind of you know, put some sort of a ranking here, I thought.
I might disagree with you on Never Had a Bad Song. I actually ended up throwing a lot into my bottom third or whatever that annoy me that I'll never need to hear again.
Really?
Those are all like the slow blues, the funky ones, the instrumentals, all of that stuff, right? But you're right. You know, I mean, the top 2/3 are all good songs. So yeah, that's kind of where I fell on.
Well, this is a band that I think for, you know, a lot of people think of Badlands and they're like, all right, so this is the band that Jakey Lee had after leaving Ozzy. It was kind of his like blues rock, blues metal band. But I think there's a lot of other styles going on below the surface there. So, you know, at times they got this Zeppelin vibe thing going. I mean, you mentioned funk before. They have a lot of, in my opinion, cool funky tunes. Then you got the kind of like slower bluesy things. And I think this band kind of wore a bunch of different hats and they did it all well. And I think for me, one of the things that really stood out in revisiting this short catalog once again is the amazing vocal talents of Ray Gillen.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's as much as I personally think that this is the kind of setting that Jake really shines in. But I listen to this and I'm like, oh man, Ray Gillen, what a talent lost right there.
Yeah, and so he ends up getting diagnosed with AIDS in 1990, and then, you know, he's already having friction with the guys, you know, Jake, in terms of songwriting, stuff like that. But he's diagnosed in 90. He's still around for the second album, still on a major label, still on Atlantic, right? And then he's still around even despite all this fighting. You know, I read that one thing about on stage in the UK and holding up a Kerrang article or something. So they're fighting on stage even, right? So, but he's still around for Dusk. He's still around for the you know, the demo recording session of the last one. But he was on his way out. You know, I mean, basically there was even there were a couple different people along the way that almost happened for the band, but then they basically never happened. So basically everything we have has Ray on it. And Ray's coming from Sabbath, and he's bringing with him Eric Singer from Sabbath, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Eric was on a couple of records. Ray never showed up on the record, but, you know, he was quickly replaced by Tony Martin, right? But yeah, so they're coming in from Sabbath. Jake's, you know, unceremoniously fired from Ozzy and, you know, finds out sort of third hand. So he's coming in with a chip on his shoulder. And then Greg Chaisson on bass. He's coming in from Surgical Steel, right? You know, not a big band. Jeff Martin eventually, when he joins, he was also with Greg in Surgical Steel.
Racer X, yeah.
But absolutely, you know, 4 superstars in this band to kick things off.
And some real strong material. And I think you kind of touched on the kind of the supreme amount of drama that was going on in this band that started fairly early on, continued till the end. And, you know, you can read all sorts of stories about what was going on here behind the scenes and how even to this day, it sounds like record execs still have it in for the guys in this band based on the situation with Ray, which, you know, very unfortunate. We don't have to get into all the mudslinging here, but anyway, let's talk about the songs. That's what this is all about.
I wrote up the story of both of the official albums, and I have them as a short ebook documents you can get at Zunior.com. And I wrote the liner notes to this one,
right.
In this. But that is a very short one. I don't even think I got an interview for it. I was just sort of asked to write you know, I ended up doing something that was more like a glorified review, unfortunately. So it wasn't one of these where I got interviews at the time. And yeah, I didn't think I talked to Jake for quite a while until later with Red Dragon Cartel. But you mentioned the drama, and it's funny. I mean, a lot of that I think comes from the fact that Jake is a real creative, artistic type, right? He never did much after it. It took a long, long time for him to ever come back again. So, you know, I think he's and just judging from talking to him on the phone, like he's definitely a real kind of you know, out there artistic creative type, and that really shows on this stuff and Red Dragon Cartel. He's a true artist on the guitar,
which I think most people don't realize.
Yeah.
So cool. All right, so I'm going to let Martin kickstart us off with his number 10. As always, we do not share our list, so I have no idea what Martin has picked or vice versa. So
this will be interesting to see where you fall on this stuff. Okay, so my number 10, I'm going to go with Hard Driver off of the first album. You know, it's a cool, noisy, fast double bass sort of one. I think this album is probably Eric Singer's greatest performance across anything he's ever done, and he's done a lot. Because I think he just falls into loving this noisy garage band bluesy rock, you know, raw kind of groove. Like put aside all the hair metal stuff, you know, even though they kind of are fitting in this hair metal thing, dirty hair metal as I've coined it, right? That Guns N' Roses, Skid Row, Motley Crue before that, Badlands, falling into where all these guys are kind of doing bluesy stuff, right? But I think Eric does a great job on it, and it's one of these slow kind of double bass ones, and just a lot of cool stuff going on all over the song.
Yeah, I dig that song too. It's a good one. Like I said, I don't think there's a song in the catalog I don't like. So I'm going to give a little, you know, when Martin and I were talking about doing the show a week ago, we both were like, hopefully we can fit something off of Dusk in here.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to do that right at number 10. I'm going to do Walking Attitude from the Dusk album.
Cool.
I think that for me, again, I like the kind of funky side of it. So we got different covers. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, look at that. Huh.
Yeah. I like the kind of funky attitude of that song. And I think, you know, for me, the Dusk album, a lot of good ideas. Some of it sounds a little unfinished, a little kind of unpolished at the end, but I think some really good songs on here in general. And Walking Attitude for me just kind of has the Badlands attitude. One of the things I always liked about this band is they got that attitude that really comes out in their songs. And I love Jake's guitar riffs in that song. That song reminds me of a lot of the material from the second album, actually, which I did quite a bit. So that's my number 10.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go with, for my number 9. No, wrong album. Yeah. We're still on the debut for my number 9. Streets Cry Freedom from this one. I just love the slow way it kind of picks up. It's got a lot of mood to it. But what I really like about it is there's this vicious riff that comes in about halfway through that's got all these pings and noises in it and stuff. And it's just a really cool, you know, non-intuitive sort of riff. But yeah, just a cool one where they, you know, there's a little bit of a Ray Gillen's Robert Plant Led Zeppelin vibe on this one. And yeah, just a lot of neat surprises, different things that you don't expect on it, and a lot of mood and atmosphere.
Surprise, surprise, we're on the same page there. Streets Cry Freedom, number 9 for me as well.
Cool.
I love the mood of that song, and I agree. I think that's another one of their kind of like little mini Zeppelin type epics, so to speak. And I like the way, I love that riff in the middle. Like you said, I like the beginning kind of, the whole song really kind of flows really well, but it kind of changes pace in its journey. So I dig that one a lot.
Cool. Okay. For my number 8, I am going to go with Shine On from this record, the second record, the last official record, also on Atlantic, of course. Yeah, just a cool bluesy, heavy one of these stop-start ones that they do. They do this a lot, where you know, like I guess the you know, the blueprint is Led Zeppelin Black Dog. That's the one everybody mentions, right? But you know, where they just basically go dang, you know, and then Ray sings, and then it starts up again, that kind of thing. So Shine On is one of those. Really cool, soulful chorus to it, nice melody. So yeah, I mean, I'm a little down on Voodoo Highway. I mean, I almost find as much stuff off of Dusk to really like as I do off of Voodoo Highway. I mean, the first album to me, like, I guess what I'm saying is way above Voodoo Highway, and Dusk. But yeah, I thought this was a really cool one.
It is. I dig that one a lot too. I'm going to stick on that same album, 3 Day Funk. So I think where Martin and I disagree on this album is I dig the kind of the funk and there's a lot of groove on this album, which is a little bit different from the debut. I think there's less of the kind of Zeppelinisms going on this album, and I don't mind that. I think, 3 Day Funk, I think, is the first song I really, really gravitated towards on this particular album. And man, that riff just kills, and the rhythm team is just working overdrive, and I love his vocals on it. And so that's my number 8.
Okay, cool. My number 7, I am going to go to the Dusk album for The Fire Lasts Forever, which I thought was a kind of cool, proggy, heavy one. I believe it's one of the longer ones on here. Let's see, do we got, 4:02, so it's not that long. Actually, none of them are that long. There's a 5-minuter. But basically, it's got some really neat parts in it, some melody. Again, it's slow and atmospheric. It builds. I think it's one of the most charming songs on it. And looking into this record a little bit, so essentially they recorded this whole thing in about 6 to 8 hours. Jeff Martin is quoted as saying, Ray was super, super accurate throughout the whole thing. He says that Jake didn't make a single mistake, or if he's heard one, he didn't even know, didn't even really notice. And I was pleasantly surprised in when Pete asked me to go through this exercise with him to have to go play this album in detail again. And it's not a demo-y sounding album, really. I mean, it sounds basically like Voodoo Highway, a lot like it. I thought the playing's great. It's amazing. I guess the one thing, well, there's two things. There's apparently not a lot of overdubs on it. And also, Jeff jokes that Ray had 50% of his lyrics finished, and he does a lot of jibba-jabbing, he called it, throughout. But, I went and looked up the lyrics this morning on the internet rather than just go through and kind of check it all myself. And it seems like the lyrics are pretty much finished. I didn't notice anything like that, like nonsense syllables or whatever. But so there's a few things that are a little rushed on it, but I was pleasantly surprised to see this does not sound like a demos album.
I mean, considering it is, if they said that it was 6 or 7 hours in the studio, I mean, that is pretty amazing. And like I said, I think my comment on that album is like, it definitely doesn't sound like, the first 2 albums, like there was a lot of time spent in the studio, kind of finishing it all off, adding all those little touches and putting that extra sheen on it. It almost sounds like they went into the studio, banged them out live, and got out of there. And that sounds like exactly what they did. So, but yeah, the songs themselves are good though.
Yeah, sure.
I dig them. All right, what are we at? 7. I'm going to go to the first album for a little Winter's Call.
Okay.
That's all Ray.
Yeah.
That song. That's like when I want to listen to a Ray Gillen classic, that's one of the tunes I put on.
Yeah.
Just a great vocal performance on there. That song's just got some great emotion to it. It's kind of proggy. It's got that little bit of Zeppelin going on there. Great musical textures on that song. Just I still remember when that album first came out, just being like, oh man, this is such like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
It's everything else that, was going on between the thrash and the hair metal and all that. Then you got this album. It's like, whoa, that's pretty, especially if you're someone who grew up on kind of bluesy, heavy rock and metal and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
good stuff.
Very cool. Okay. So my number 6 is Dancing on the Edge off of this one. Another sort of fast, chaotic one. Where you just get a lot of that energy, and as you said, Pete, I mean, definitely a good point. I mean, just a breath of fresh air. This record, it just felt. I mean, you knew it was a major label release. The album cover had that sort of soft photo, so everything about it looked major label. But there was a simplicity and this bluesiness. Again, I call it dirty hair metal, but I also say at the same time there was this definite trend towards bluesy hair metal, right? Going back to the roots, going back to Aerosmith and Rolling Stones and all this for what you're doing. Poison did it, Cinderella did it, everybody did it, right? So this was like the best example of that, and you just got this fiery performance. And speaking of that, I mean, again, Eric Singer on this, I love that first fill when the song just kicks in, where it's just a simple snare thing. But he doesn't go toms and then hits the cymbals. It's just and then they're into the song, right? So he keeps it simple and almost smallish to like underscore the idea that this is a garagey blues band, like strip away all the massive corporate reasons that hair metal is about to die, and along with it Badlands. You know, so they're in there just being a kind of like a kick-ass rock and roll band, and that this song is one of those.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree. My number 6, and you know what's interesting too is the fact that this band was managed by Paul O'Neill. That's like kind of like nobody ever talks about that.
Yeah.
Just, you know, kind of a weird band for him to be associated with, knowing all we know about him with Sabotage and TSO. So it's really interesting. My number 6, I believe you already mentioned, Shine On from Voodoo Highway.
Cool. Yeah.
I like the little bits of kind of psychedelia that's like running through that tune as well, which is a little bit different. Again, that's, I think for me, the second album is fairly different from the first, and in a good way. You know, I mean, you could say the first album is their classic, but I think there's a lot to recommend here. And Shine On's got that great chorus, and it's got some really cool textures that Jake adds in, you know, drawing from all of his influences, which is pretty cool. You know, I love the 2 albums he did with Ozzy, but it's like, for me, this is what I want to hear him play.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. All right. My number 5, Pete's got good taste, of course. We've got Winter's Call from here, it's already been on Pete's list. Again, very, very Led Zeppelin, heavy Led Zeppelin, very cool Led Zeppelin chorus. It had a video, right? So we had a video for this and Dancing in the Dark. And then I noticed, just this morning I saw, I don't even remember ever seeing it, but I guess there was a video for last time off of Voodoo, Voodoo Highway as well.
I saw that last week,
yeah. So there was a video for Winter's Call, and they're playing out there on a stage, and there's fire behind them and stuff, all the cliches, right? But yeah, Ray, what a great front man, a good-looking guy. He's just got good stage presence. The rest of the guys are throwing shapes all over the place, you know, hair metal look, hair flying all over the place. Even Eric Singer looks really cool, right? I think he's got a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow going possibly on that. I mean, but the band looks great. They're playing great. So yeah, that's just a cool, really, you know, dramatic one, right? Very cool.
Yep, it's a classic. All right, so number 5 for me, going to go Dreams in the Dark from the first album.
Okay.
I think that's probably the song they really wanted to push to break the band. I don't know if it was quite hooky enough for hair metal nation at the time, but I think for all of us, you know, regular hard rock and metal fans, I think a very fine song. I think it's the first song that I really kind of gravitated towards when this album was first released. But good song, great hook, great chorus. I dig everything about it.
Cool. Okay. All right. And my number 4, I'm going to go with Soulstealer off of Voodoo Highway. I just love that it's got this grinding, heavy, marauding riff. I mean, what a tone Jake gets across all of this stuff, right? Literally all of it, all 3 of them. He's got this killer tone. And this is one with just a cool metal riff, and you hear a little bit of noise too as playing. Like you can hear it's really cool, energetic playing. But this is just a slow, grinding one, and something I welcomed on Voodoo Highway because again, I disagree a little bit with you that I find the eccentric stuff on this album not to my liking. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear the cover. I don't want to hear any blues. I don't want to hear any funk. I just want to hear the first album over again, right? So I love the songs on here that remind me of the first album all over again.
And you and I are on the same page twice here. So Soulstealer is my number 4 as well. Right. And I agree with you. His tone and those riffs on that song are amazing. And I love the palm mutes and the kind of, it's just amazing stuff. And that's just the genius of this guy as a guitar player who can kind of weave all these different influences into this kind of very, very unique sound. I mean, he's got the Jakey Lee sound, and there's really, you know, how many other guitar, you know, he never sounded like Randy. He's just, he just brings something new to the table. And I always kind of dug his playing quite a bit, and a very underrated, you know, I mean, everybody knows Jakey Lee, but you know, sometimes when people talk about like the greatest guitar players of all time, or specifically in metal, you know, does he ever get mentioned in the top 5 or 10? Not always, but he's definitely up there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. When we did the Aussie episode, you know, you bring up a point. I mean, I'm thinking back and I'm thinking Bark at the Moon had one Jakey Lee and Ultimate Sin had another Jakey Lee, but I think this is him really doing what he wants to do, like breathing this bluesy heavy metal. He loves his old stuff from the 70s. So I don't think we got his identity on either of those Aussie albums, and we really get his identity here. So okay, so my number 3, right? That's where we're up to. So number 3, I went with High Wire off of this one. And, you know, when looking at my list, I was kind of playing these songs back to back, and it literally sounds like Soulstealer. I mean, I think it's the same speed. It might even be the same speed exactly if they're locking these things to a grid. And it's got the same kind of grinding, cool, marauding riff. I love the production on it. But yeah, it's almost like it proved to me that I like those kinds of songs, because here I am picking two of them and they sound practically identical to each other. So yeah, High Wire off the debut.
Yep, that's a great one. Back to Voodoo Highway from my number 3, The Last Time. Kickoff track, very fine song to kick off this album, I think. Good kind of driving heavy rock tune. I think it probably starts off this album in a way that doesn't follow with the rest of the songs, but that's a good thing. And I think for me, it's one of the songs from this album that's most similar to the first album. Great chorus on it as well.
Cool. Okay. My number 2, I went with Dreams in the Dark off of this record. No, I guess it's not first album. I think it's the first song on side 2, possibly. I don't know. Anyways, it was the lead-off single and the lead-off video. I'm pretty sure of that. And I love it. I love the video and the song itself, and the singing of Ray is so Whitesnake. It's just like a classic Whitesnake song, right? And yeah, you see them on the big stage and the whole bit. And I just think it's, you know, as a guilty pleasure Badlands song, it's because it's pretty hair metal-y, right? But I just love all the David Coverdale sort of timing and you know, breathtaking of the vocals in that song. I mean, Ray just has so much sort of magnetism in it, and yeah, I just feel like it's the candy coated cotton candy guilty pleasure song, because it's the closest link to the fact that, hey, you know, we got our deal because it's hair metal times and we look hair metal and we're sort of hair metal. We're doing something cooler and something with a little more integrity, but let's face it, we got signed to Atlantic because hair metal is big. And this song is very much like that. So yeah, just loads of personality to that song.
So what do you think? So if this album came out in 88 or even 87, does that song do even bigger business? Because I think by 89, we're at the tail end of that whole movement. Yeah. So 2 years prior, do you think that this album is enormous?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, even still, it sold 400,000 copies roughly. But yeah, so if you move it back, that gives them time to have Voodoo Highway come out. And also, they're looking more like Visionaries if it's a little while earlier, because they're in early on the blues thing. They're in early on the, you know, the dressed down look. They look like you know, the whole look of that first album is kind of like a Wild West look, right?
Oh yeah, certainly. Yep.
Yeah, so they're looking like normal guys rather than, as David Coverdale would say, Christmas trees, right? So yeah, I think they would have done better, you know, competing a little earlier. But you're right, 88, Soundgarden's already got a record out, I think. Nirvana's got Bleach out in 89. So grunge is coming along. Those you know, those who are really into music, grunge has already happened in 89. Yeah. Essentially, I mean, it happens much bigger in 91, but yeah, it's already picking up. People are already getting ticked off at these bands and this music and the misogyny and the materialism and just the stupidity and the producers all getting, you know, $300,000 or $200,000 to produce things, and the videos costing that much. Everybody's just really starting to get really impatient with this whole hair metal thing at this point. Yeah,
it got just way too cheesy for me. I mean, that's, you know, it's like some of the bands, sure, but between the look and the videos, it became more about the image than the actual music. But that's a rant for another time. I actually did a whole video on that whole stuff.
Sure you did.
All right, my number 2, I'm going to go with probably the most emotional track on the debut album. It's moody, it's very Zeppelin-y, Seasons, which,
yeah.
You know, a lot of times when folks ask me, well, I don't really know a lot about Badlands, you know, steer me towards a couple songs. That song is one of them, and my next song is going to be another one that just, for me, kind of exemplify both kind of ends of the spectrum for these guys. So, but Seasons, just what a gorgeous song. It's just so epic sounding. And then for me, that's like their big kind of Zeppelin moment on this first album.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right. My number one, I'm going to go with The Last Time off of this record. I loved it so much. I actually learned how to play it on guitar. I had a guitar during all this time. And, you know, I loved all those little licks and stuff that he does in there. So I thought I really, you know, a few of these songs I really got into, but that one I wanted to learn kind of start to finish. I just loved all the cool little things going on. All the little, you know, between the notes and everything, all the little pings and stuff. But I just thought that, what it exemplifies for me is like a mature version, a complicated version of what the band was on the first album, transferred onto the second album. So to me, it's the song that would have been the best song on the first album. It certainly feels like a first album song. Here it is kicking off the second album. It's the one that is the least eccentric, I think, you know, possibly across the whole album. I mean, there's 4 or 5. I mean, I love Voodoo Highway, but there's a bunch that I find that are just like stretching out way too much into the bluesy or funky or eccentric end. And this one has just got a lot of cool little riffs and things lined up. And yeah, like I say, I don't know if it was for the first time or not, probably not, but I watched the video this morning, you know, the whole Mexican, that's another hair metal trope, right? Set up in a Wild West Mexican spaghetti.
Somewhere outside, right? Yeah.
Saxon did the same thing. It's probably the same damn set that Saxon used, right? But so they're set up there and the wind's blowing and the dust and people are running around shooting guns and all this stuff. And they're doing a live thing. But yeah, it's kind of sad seeing Ray there, because this is 2 years past his AIDS diagnosis. And, you know, everybody was saying he was looking a little thin and frail. And in there you can kind of see maybe he had the big bandana on his head. Maybe he was losing his hair a little. I don't know. He died about a year later, I believe. And so yeah, it's a little bittersweet, but basically, you know, I think that's just the band's masterpiece of being like very, very Badlands.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the chorus on that.
Yeah.
Not only the vocal, but his riffing on the chorus is amazing.
And the dive bomb, you know, last time. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yep. Yeah. I remember when Voodoo Highway came out, and that's like obviously the first song on the album. It's like, oh my God, this is so good. Yeah, I agree. I think we both hit on the same point. It's like that song takes on it kind of continues the formula from the first album, but like you said, a little more mature, right? So, and it's different from the rest of what comes on Voodoo Highway. Yeah. So from one kickoff track to another, I'm going to go with High Wire from the first album, which, man, I mean, does that song have balls or what?
Yeah.
That's, I mean, damn. And that riff absolutely destroys. Absolutely destroys. I mean, you know, it's like I can't even put into words how much I love that opening riff. It's just so badass, so badass. And, you know, Ray comes out and he's just like a house of fire. And it's just a kick-ass song from start to finish that you don't want to end. And it's got groove that just goes on forever. So for me, that it's like Badlands, High Wire. They go together. It's always the first song I mention when I talk about this band.
Very cool. Yeah. So we had a lot of crossover there, eh? Probably about half of it, really.
Yeah. So cool, you got a couple honorable mentions you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I do. This was kind of interesting. I had 2 of my 3 honorable mentions are from Dusk. One is Dog, which is that fast, you know, punky, almost it feels like a punk song that a grunge band would do. Like when they do a short, fast one on a grunge record, it reminded me a little bit of that. It's just called Dog, so it's got like, you know, a one-word title like grunge guys used to do, right? It's got that unison riff where Ray kind of sings with it. I picked Heaven's Train from Voodoo Highway as well. You know, another one of these stop-start riff ones. It's a fast one, so it feels like a song that could have been on the debut. And I picked Tribal Moon from Dusk, which is a little hair metal-y, but again, a stop-start riff, kind of really spirited sort of song. But yeah, there were a lot of good songs on Dusk, I thought. I found it. I found it about the same conservative level. Conservative meaning how close are we to the debut as Voodoo Highway, really across the whole space of it. So it was that was a pleasant surprise revisiting Dusk.
Yeah, same here. Because I only got Dusk, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that. So I don't have as much history with that. So it's been cool to kind of listen to that over the years. You know, those first 2 albums so well. and Dusk for me is, still kind of newish, I guess. But Tribal Moon, I agree with you, is a very fun song. I also like Fat Cat, and Ride the Jack is a pretty cool tune. And I also want to throw out there Love Don't Mean a Thing from the Voodoo Highway album, which I dig. And Devil Stomp is fun from the debut, I think. And then a couple others I really like, too, that you mentioned that didn't show up on my list as well.
Yeah, I almost put Devil Stomp up there, but yeah, it's funny. I did the same thing we did with Gillen. I thought, why don't I just rate them all? So I've actually got a list here. So my bottom third is I put Rumblin' Train, Fire and Rain, Jade Song, Voodoo Highway, Lord Knows, The Rover, In a Dream, Joe's Blues, and Fat Cat. So I basically took everything that didn't sound like the debut album and threw it into the basement, because that's kind of how I feel about this. I don't want to hear instrumentals. I don't want to hear slow blues. I don't want to hear anything like that. I want to hear Jake just firing up the high wire riff basically throughout.
Yeah, and it's funny because like almost all the songs that you mentioned just there would have wound up in my bottom half too, and I like them, I do, but I kind of like well, because we talked about a couple things. So there's like the kind of heavy, bluesy rock kind of Zeppelin-y thing. There's the funk metal or whatever you want to call it. And then they're kind of like slow blues stuff. I like the funk stuff better than the slow blues stuff. Mm-hmm. So like Rumble and Train and all that stuff, that's really cool. I dig it, but I like the funkier stuff better. Like, 3 Day Funk and Soulstealer was kind of funky, and, Devil Stomp and what have you. And I love the stop-start stuff that these guys do, because really there's nobody else really doing that at the time. So pretty cool. So a great catalog. So I enjoyed doing this. This was fun.
Very cool.
So you know how it goes, everybody watching. So in the comments below, give us your top 10 Badlands songs or your top 5, or if you want to rank every single song, go right ahead. There's no right or wrong answer here. We all hear and love these songs differently, but I think we can all agree that there's a lot of special material in this catalog. So thanks again for Martin for coming on the show. Martin's coming back. So just to give you a little idea what Martin and I are going to be working over the next couple of weeks, we are going to be ranking the studio albums of the Police. Martin, what's the other one that we were talking about? I'm drawing a
possibly your Blue Oyster Cult thing, with the, your
Deep Cut Dive.
I don't want to give away things because you're planning kind of a new sort of show.
Yeah, Deep Cut Dive with Blue Oyster Cult, and top 10 songs of the Babies. The Babies.
Babies, yes, top 10 songs of the Babies. And we talked a little bit about doing something with Blackfoot. I can't remember. It was either ranking the albums or the songs. But yeah, I'm up for something with Blackfoot too. I'm a big fan of that. So.
Cool. Yeah, me too. So that's all coming up in the weeks ahead with Martin and I. So you can catch us every Saturday, I guess. Well, we may squeeze in a Friday, because I know Friday morning is good for me too, bright and early. And Martin and I are both like early risers. So Martin and I, the sun's just coming up, and Martin and I are already like, all right, you ready to go? So
absolutely, yeah.
Yep. So thanks everybody for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course. We're here on YouTube all the damn time. Martin, where can they find you?
MartinPopoff.com for all your book needs. There's PayPal buttons there for everything. I just got Holy Smoke back in, 100 copies. I just got Judas Priest Decade of Domination back in. The Blue Oyster Cult, I've got about 30 copies left, and I'm getting signals that might be the end of that one. That's the big coffee table book. But and then I've got Iron Maiden, what's it called? Empire of the Clouds, Iron Maiden in the 2000s coming in late next week.
Wow, you just reminded me how beautiful that Blue Oyster Cult book looks, and I don't have a copy.
We'll talk.
All right, everybody, take care. Enjoy your weekend. Tune in shortly. So we got Jack Toledano coming up in about an hour. We're going to do top 10 songs of Primal Fear, and then Jason Tipton from 0 Hours coming on for an interview this afternoon. We're going to talk about the upcoming 0 Hour album that's going to be hopefully arriving before the end of the year. So if you're a progressive metal fan, you don't want to miss that. So take care, everybody. Martin, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Very cool.